From the moment the lights went out in Mexico City, you just knew we weren't in for anything boring. That opening lap lit the fuse for everything that followed, and honestly, if you blinked, you missed the moment that swung the whole championship. Lando Norris did what champions do when the pressure's highest. He converted pole into a lights-to-flag masterclass, controlled the pace, and built an advantage so big it looked almost clinical. That win didn't feel like luck. It felt like a statement. You saw the chaos around him on the first lap. People running wide, drivers using the cut through the grass. Oscar Piastri suddenly tumbling down the order after a wide moment that turned what had been a calm weekend for him into a recovery mission. And while Piastri methodically picked his way back through the field later, that opening trouble was McLaren's worst-case scenario, and Norris turned it into their best possible result. As the race settled, the altitude and thin air forced teams into constant strategy adjustments. Tyres degrade differently, aero behaviour changes, and pit timing becomes a chess match. Those variables are exactly what elevated the tactical side of this weekend. Teams chasing the perfect window, while Norris simply kept doing what it seemed we'd done all weekend. Extracting consistent fast laps and letting the stopwatch do the talking. You also can't talk about Mexico without the bizarre shared moments off the racing surface. Two of the big names went wide, came back on, and suddenly the stewards had a big decision on their hands. That's getting into Chapter 2's battleground, but here in the closing stages it was clear one driver had made the whole weekend look simple, while everyone else was cleaning up. Oliver Bearman, yes, Bearman, rode the noise, the missteps, and the strategic roulette to a sensational podium result that announced him to the wider grid as more than a prospect. He's earned the watch closely tag with real pace and composure. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen had his own weekend in the middle of the pack early on, wrestling with a car that clearly wasn't happy at this circuit. You could see it in his radio and hear it in the way he described the RB21's lack of grip and outright pace compared to the frontrunners. All of this combined to flip the standings. Norris crosses the line with a margin that feels like dominance, and when the numbers shook out, he'd taken the championship lead, just by a single point. But that single point is enormous when we talk about momentum. I want to know what grabbed you most from this race. Was it Norris's composed demolition at the front, Piastri's recovery drive, Bearman's breakout moment, or the stewarding fuss around those off-track exchanges? Drop your pick in the comments below and tell me why. And if you're enjoying these quick, sharp F1 rundowns, subscribe and ring the bell. I'm chasing 2,000 subscribers, and every new viewer helps the channel push for more deep dives and live reaction pieces. If you prefer a short poll, I'll pin one in the comments. The steward's call on Lewis Hamilton in Mexico is the kind of decision that splits rooms and lights up every social feed for a week. And if you want to understand why people are still arguing about it, you've got to walk through both the rule and the emotion behind it. On paper, the rule is simple. If you leave the track and rejoin in a way that gains you an advantage, the stewards can impose a penalty. In this case, a 10-second time penalty that effectively wiped Hamilton out of podium contention. Now, the footage showed Hamilton with all four wheels off in the escape road and rejoining in a place that netted him time and track position. The officials said their telemetry and video evidence supported the penalty for gaining an advantage. That's the procedural side. And if you're the steward reading the rulebook and looking at hard data, it's a defensible call. But the human reaction is where things get loud. Fans point to inconsistency. Why this penalty and not that other incident? Pundits question whether the stewards applied the same yardstick to every driver that weekend, and social feeds filled up with people saying the sanction altered the competitive narrative of the race. Importantly, the team response and how Ferrari managed the penalty in the pits added another layer. Ferrari waited the full 10 seconds before working on the car to comply with the sanction, which is the correct tactical response, but the enforced stationary time changed the pit stop calculus and removed Hamilton from contention for a top finish. That consequence is what many people are actually debating. It's not just a rule application, it's a race-defining intervention. I'm not here to referee your hot takes, but I will give you both sides. The stewards are trying to enforce fair play and the written regulations, and supporters say the punishment matched the infraction. On the other hand, critics argue that stewarding is opaque, that similar off-track excursions sometimes get a slap on the wrist and sometimes a heavier blow, and that when a title fight is this tight, any inconsistency becomes magnified into a crisis of trust. This is where the sport needs better communication. Explain the telemetry, show the decision timeline, make the logic visible. Because the current "we saw the data" line fuels conspiracy theories more than confidence. So let me ask you directly, was the penalty fair? Type yes or no in the comments and give one sentence explaining why. I'll pin the most insightful reply. Also tell me which change you'd make to stewarding if you could only change one thing: transparency, consistency, or harsher penalties. Pick one and explain in a short sentence. Oh, and quick reminder, if you want more of these debates broken down without the noise, hit subscribe and ring the bell. I'm pushing to 2,000 subscribers, and every new viewer helps us deliver deeper, cleaner takes from the paddock. Coming next, I'll break down how this penalty and the Mexico result rewrote the championship math and what teams should be thinking strategically for the remaining rounds. Now that we've got the controversy unpacked, let's talk about what this actually means for the championship fight. Because believe me, this 10-second penalty in Mexico did more than just take points off Lewis Hamilton's tally. It changed the tone of the title run completely. Before Mexico, Mercedes still had an outside shot at clawing back in the constructors' battle, and Hamilton himself was hanging on to faint hopes of a top 3 finish in the drivers' standings. But that penalty, combined with Red Bull's and Ferrari's consistent podium runs, made those scenarios mathematically brutal. Every point matters in this late stage of the season, and when you look at the margin between teams like McLaren, Mercedes, and Aston Martin in the constructors' race, we're talking about millions in prize money and critical bragging rights. Those lost points sting far more than fans realise. For Red Bull, though, it was another weekend that reinforced their technical mastery. Even with scrutiny over the bib trick on the RB20 and questions about their setup choices, they left Mexico looking like a team still in control of its own destiny. Max Verstappen executed another clinical drive. Not necessarily dominant, but ruthlessly efficient. What's interesting here is that Verstappen doesn't need to dominate every race anymore. He just needs to avoid mistakes and capitalize on chaos behind him, like the Hamilton penalty. That's a position of strength most teams would kill for. But make no mistake, Ferrari's resurgence since mid-season, especially with their high downforce package, has made them a legitimate threat in qualifying trim. If they can convert that into consistent Sunday pace, we might see them edge out Mercedes for second in the standings. And remember, that matters strategically. Finishing P2 rather than P3 gives better garage position, more FIA influence, and psychological momentum heading into next year. Now, let's talk about Mercedes. The Mexico Grand Prix exposed something Toto Wolff's crew probably didn't want to admit. Their W15 is still unpredictable. On high-deg tracks and in hotter conditions, tyre management continues to haunt them. Hamilton's pace was solid until that penalty, but George Russell's performance showed the car's limitations when forced into long stints on mediums. Combine that with the recent tension between the drivers, subtle radio frustrations, questions about setup direction, and you can sense a team in a bit of internal turbulence. They're not collapsing, but they're definitely searching for identity. And that's where fan frustration connects with team reality. Mercedes isn't just fighting Red Bull anymore, they're fighting expectations built over years of dominance. And yet, Every time something like this happens, a controversial call, a penalty, a disappointing finish, it reignites the question, is Mercedes truly rebuilding for the future, or just trying to survive the present? That's what makes this storyline so captivating heading into the next rounds. Because for all the criticism Hamilton gets, he's still the heartbeat of that team. He's been through title deciders, steward controversies, and regulation resets. And even in 2025, he's still driving with something to prove. So here's what I want from you. F1 fans, do you think Mercedes will bounce back strong before the season ends? Or is this version of the Silver Arrows just too inconsistent to fight for wins again this year? Drop your take in the comments. Bounce back or still struggling? I'll read your predictions out in the next video. Now let's dive into Red Bull and the bib trick controversy, because this is one of those storylines that really shows how fine the line is between clever, innovation and regulatory headache in Formula One. During the Mexican Grand Prix, Red Bull unveiled a subtle aerodynamic tweak, dubbed the bib trick by fans and analysts, designed to manipulate airflow over the RB21 in a way that improved downforce without violating the letter of the regulations. On Friday, the car looked fast, almost alarmingly so, and Max Verstappen was candid about the challenges he still faced with the car's baseline pace. But by Sunday, the trick seemed to give them a tangible advantage in corners, and that has rival teams seething. McLaren, Ferrari, and even Mercedes engineers reportedly spent post-race hours poring over onboard footage and telemetry, trying to understand just how much the tweak impacted lap times and whether the FIA would intervene. Here's where it gets fascinating. Red Bull's rivals are now publicly pressing for clarification from the FIA, questioning whether this innovation crosses the line into illegal aerodynamic device territory. At the same time, Red Bull remains confident, asserting that they are operating fully within the rules. From a strategic perspective, it's classic Red Bull. Push the envelope without overstepping, force other teams to spend resources defending, and maintain the psychological edge. For Verstappen, it's both a blessing and a curse. While he can extract performance when the car is optimal, he's already admitted the baseline pace is not where it needs to be for him to dominate outright. That makes any incremental advantage crucial. And that's exactly what the bib trick provides. The FIA, meanwhile, is in a tricky position. If they allow it, they risk accusations of inconsistency or favoritism. If they ban it retroactively, they open themselves up to protests from multiple teams and potential championship ramifications. This is where the drama off-track matches the intensity on track. Fans are divided. Some admire Red Bull's ingenuity, others call it a loophole exploitation. And as the season enters its final rounds, any FIA clarification could shift the balance of power literally overnight. It's also important to note the human element here. Max's honesty in Mexico, openly stating the RB21 lacked pace and that he would need incidents from other drivers to climb positions, adds a layer of vulnerability. He's letting the world know, even the best car plus the best driver combination can hit a ceiling. And now, rivals have both the incentive and evidence to challenge Red Bull's small innovations. Meanwhile, Christian Horner and the engineers must balance risk and reward. Push too hard, and you get a technical directive. Play it safe, and you lose championship points to rivals like Norris and Pastry. So I want to hear from you. Do you think the FIA will allow the BIB trick to stand, or is a mid-season technical directive inevitable? Vote in the comments allowed or banned, and give a one-line reason why. And if you're enjoying these inside takes from the paddock and want more breaking F1 news before anyone else, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Every new subscriber helps us reach 2,000 ton, which is a huge milestone for the channel. Now, let's turn our attention to Aston Martin and why Mexico City once again highlighted their struggles. On Friday practice, the team looked competitive, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll were inside the top 10. Fans were optimistic, and some even whispered that Aston Martin might finally convert speed into points. But as qualifying rolled around, reality hit hard. Alonso dropped to 12th and Stroll to 19th, leaving fans and the team questioning why Friday pace never translated to race weekend success. This pattern has become almost a hallmark of Aston Martin's 2025 campaign. Alonso himself has been blunt, admitting that without unusual race circumstances, scoring points is unlikely. Stroll's frustration was even more visible, telling reporters to ask the team rather than trying to explain the car's inconsistent grip himself. It's a rare glimpse into the human side of F1, the mental toll of preparing all week, only to have potential points slip away in qualifying. The Mexico circuit is particularly harsh for Aston Martin. Its high altitude affects engine performance and aerodynamics, and the long straights punish cars lacking raw pace. This year, just like 2023 and 2024, Aston Martin failed to make the car competitive in these conditions. But there's a glimmer of hope. The arrival of legendary aerodynamics guru Adrian Newey. While Newey isn't working on the 2025 car, he's shaping the 2026 Challenger, which could revolutionize the team's competitiveness. This means the team is balancing short-term pain with long-term gain, enduring frustrating weekends now for the promise of a breakthrough later. It's a classic F1 story of strategy off-track mirroring performance on track. The dynamic between Alonso and Stroll also tells us a lot about team culture. Alonso maintains a diplomatic, realistic perspective, while Stroll expresses frustration openly. Together, they highlight the psychological impact of repeated underperformance. For fans, it's a reminder that driver skill is only one piece of the puzzle. Car development, engineering communication, and strategic focus are equally vital. Every race without points adds pressure, not just on the drivers, but the engineers and leadership. And as Aston Martin fights Racing Point Bulls for 6th in the Constructors' Championship, every missed opportunity becomes critical. So what's the takeaway? Aston Martin's 2025 campaign shows the tension between short-term results and long-term planning. Fans may be disappointed now, but the future looks promising if Newey's innovations take effect in 2026. The team is in transition, and patience will be key. For those of you following F1 closely, think about this. Which team do you believe is best managing this balance between present frustration and future potential? Type your choice in the comments, Aston Martin or other team, and explain in one line why. Also, don't forget to hit subscribe and like the video if you enjoy deep dives into the latest F1 drama. It really helps the channel reach 2,000 subscribers so we can keep bringing you insider content. That wraps up our breakdown of the Mexican Grand Prix, the championship shakeups, Red Bull's innovation drama, and Aston Martin's ongoing story. The F1 season is getting more intense by the weekend, and you'll want to stick around for all the next updates, because anything can happen in the final rounds.